holding a media briefing to inform the public as to the work of the Commission, how far we've come, and also other queries regarding the Constitutional Court judgment of the former president that was done yesterday. DCJ, members of the media are here. The DCJ will brief them, and then after that, we'll hold a Q&A session. And now hand over to you, the Deputy Chief Justice Zondo, to lead us in this media briefing. Over to you, DCJ.
Thank you very much, Reverend. Good morning to members of the media. It has been a long time since we last had a briefing such as this. I know that many of you would have liked to have had more media briefings like this with the Commission. We certainly would have liked to do that, but as you know, the challenges of the work of the Commission have been such that we have been trying to use every time we have to try and complete the hearing of oral evidence. That is why, as you know, from the second half of last year, we decided to have evening sessions of hearings in addition to the day sessions. That continued this year, and it intensified over the past 4 months or so. So I apologize to the extent that you might feel that we have not been available to you so that you could raise whatever questions you may wish to raise. But I hope that you will understand that our priority was really to try and complete the hearing of oral evidence. I want to take this opportunity to point out that we certainly appreciate the very important role that the media plays in our society. We appreciate the enormous contribution that you as journalists make in building our society, in building our country, in placing before society various things that society should know. Of course, you know what I'm talking about because you have played a very important role towards the creation of this commission. Indeed, as I have been hearing evidence since August 2018, I've come across many areas where it was quite clear to me that had we not have the kind of investigative journalism that we have in this country, this society and this commission would not have known certain things, ugly things that have now been placed before society. So I don't want you as the media and journalists to ever think that when we have not been available, it has been because we don't appreciate the important role that you play. We really salute you for your contribution. We think that this commission has benefited enormously from the investigative journalism that we have in this country. So I thank you for the support for the work of the commission that you have shown, at least many of you. We appreciate that very much. We had planned that we would have a media briefing today or around about the end of June. before the Constitutional Court handed down its judgment yesterday in the matter of the Secretary of the Commission and Mr. Jacob Zuma. We had planned to have this media briefing because, as I indicated in the High Court application for an extension, the recent one, our plan after the High Court granted us an extension, our plan after the end of March, which is when we had thought we would have finished oral evidence, was that if at least we didn't finish oral evidence by the end of March, we should finish it by the end of June. Because as you might recall, the previous extension had been granted on the understanding that I had said that we hoped or we would complete oral evidence by end of March and use April, May, and June to prepare the report. And I've no doubt that many of you have read my affidavit that was the basis of our application to the High Court for an extension. I've explained that we simply found that there was still very important evidence by end of March, which the Commission could not exclude, which it had to hear. So we then planned that at least by the end of June, we should have completed the oral evidence. As you know, we applied for an extension of the term of the Commission up to the end of September. The High Court in Pretoria granted that extension on Monday. So we have up to the end of September. But today marks an important milestone in the work of the Commission, because except for a few witnesses who will be heard sometime in July, for all intents and purposes, except for those, we have covered all the oral evidence that we identified as important. And as I said in my affidavit in the extension application, we are talking about 5 or 6 or so witnesses that the Commission has identified as important to be called, and plus the President, who must still come and give evidence before the Commission. So it's quite an important milestone. We'll hear some evidence today. We'll complete the cross-examination of Ms. Mngoma by Mr. Kikaba's counsel at some stage today. And there will be 1 or 2 other witnesses that we'll deal with. But apart from that, then there will not be any hearings of oral evidence except for the witnesses that I've indicated. Of course, those are witnesses that the Commission has identified as important. And of course, the President's evidence is important. And his evidence, as you all know, will cover whatever was outstanding in his evidence as President of the ANC. And then he will give evidence as President of the country and former Deputy President of the country. So that is where we are. Save for that, we will be busy with the preparation of the report, and some work has been going on in terms of summary and analysis of evidence for quite some time, but we are going to work hard to try and make sure that the report is completed within the time available. So I did not mention earlier, and I don't know whether Reverend Stimela mentioned, We do have at the media briefing virtually Mr. Paul Pretorius, the head of the legal team of the commission. We do have Mr. Nombembe, the head of the investigation team, and we do have Professor Musala, the secretary of the commission, and in due course they might have something to say. So that is the position of where we are with the work of the commission. I'm told that since August, when the hearing of oral evidence started, August 2018, I have set 418 hearing days. I've set for 418 days hearing evidence. I'm told that the transcript of evidence that has been led before the commission since August 2018 is more than 71,000 pages that has been produced. And in terms of witnesses, I'm told that I have had more than 300 witnesses. I think about 330 or 339 witnesses that I've had. So the commission has collected a lot of evidence. With regard to the judgment of the Constitutional Court that was handed down yesterday, we welcome the judgment. We think that the judgment is of great importance in our constitutional democracy. It vindicates the rule of law in our country. It vindicates the supremacy of our Constitution. It reaffirms the principle that we are all equal before the law. It underlines the importance of accountability in our constitutional democracy. We welcome the judgment. We think it's a very important judgment for our country. We have seen once again the judiciary stepping forward and doing what the Constitution expects it to do in our country. There have been a number of times, as we all know, when the judiciary has stepped forward and done what is expected of it in different circumstances. It may be important to just mention briefly that one wishes that it had never become necessary to reach this point. And it's important to remind everybody that the commission was tasked with investigating allegations of state capture, corruption, and fraud in the public sector. It had evidence that various people, including Mr. Jacob Zuma, may have been involved in certain matters that fall within the terms of reference of the commission. It was the duty of the commission to insist that he should come before it and testify. The commission insisted that that should happen. The commission did not just rush to issue a summons against Mr. Zuma. The commission did not just rush to court. The commission did what it had to do when it had become quite clear that Mr. Zuma was not prepared to cooperate with the Commission. It might be important to also make the point that to the extent that some within our country say from time to time that some of the concerns that Mr. Zuma may have expressed with regard to the Commission to justify his refusal to appear before the Commission are understandable. It's important to bear in mind that Mr. Zuma said after he had launched his review application against the decision of the chairperson of the Commission on recusal, that he should not have been expected to appear, as I understand it, while his application for the review of the recusal decision had not been decided by the courts. But the fact of the matter is that Mr. Zuma knew, because it was said at the hearing on the 19th of November, that the mere fact of filing a review application did not mean that he was free not to appear before the Commission. Mr. Zuma knew also that if he thought that the fact that he had filed in court a review application was a valid ground for him not to appear before the Commission, he knew that he needed to have put his case before the Constitutional Court. He had received papers from the Commission that had been filed in the Constitutional Court, which made it clear that the position of the Commission was that the mere fact that he had filed a review application was not enough to justify that he should not appear before the Commission and to justify that he should not be compelled to appear. And he chose not to put that case before the Constitutional Court, and the Constitutional Court made the decision to compel him to appear before the Commission. Of course, he raised other concerns, but there are many people who appear in our courts every day who have concerns about magistrates and judges, and they all appear and they do not refuse to appear just because they are unhappy about the presiding officer. Our law allows for processes to deal with such grievances, and those processes should be used. From our side, we have done what was expected of us in terms of the Constitution and the law. In handing down the judgment that it handed down yesterday, the Constitutional Court also marked the end of the part of the judiciary. The judiciary has done its part. So the Commission will continue with its work. We welcome the judgment of the Constitutional Court, and we'll continue with our work and complete our work. We know that Mr. Zuma took the view that he will not participate in the Commission, he will not appear, and he said the Commission can reach whatever conclusions it wishes to reach or draw whatever inferences it wishes to draw. We will continue and complete the work of the Commission and hand over the report of the Commission to the President in due course. So those are the remarks I wanted to make about the point where we are as a commission with our work, and the point which we have reached with regard to our dealings with Mr. Jacob Zuma, that for us as the commission, the handing down of the judgment marked the end of our part and the end of the judiciary's part. Whatever is left is for others and not for us. Thank you. Mr. Pretorius, Mr. Nombembe, Professor Musala, I don't know if you wish to say anything, add anything I might have left on any of these issues. Mr. Pretorius?
I don't have anything to add, DCJ.
Yes, okay. Mr. Nombembe?
It's well covered, DCJ. I've got nothing else to add.
Yes. Prof?
I'm happy, sir. I'm fine.
Okay, all right. I am quite happy to take some questions from the media.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, for that input. Members of the media, I request that you be crisp and to the point so that we can allow as many questions as possible. I suggest DCJ will take 3 questions, and then the DCJ will deal with that, and then we'll refer to the other members of EXCO if there's a need. I can see that there were hands that were raised. Hajara, will you please introduce yourself and the media house that you're coming from? And then after that, it will be Tando, and then after Tando, it will be Angela in that order, and then we'll take the hands after the 3 hands I've mentioned. Over to you, Hajara. Thank you. Hajara? Hajara is disappeared. Can you go to Tando? Tando, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes,
yes, I can hear you, Hajara.
Thank you.
Good morning, DCJ. My name is Hajra Almaji. I'm the political editor at Business Day.
Yeah.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak to the media. I think this engagement as the commission wraps up at work is very important. Just a couple of questions from me. Number one, as you draw up the report, can you give us a timeline in terms of provisional and final reports? When will they be submitted? And I think this is important, especially given that the history of commissions in South Africa has shown that while the commission sitting itself from the TRC onwards has been a very cathartic exercise, the findings and recommendations have not served the intended purpose of the commission to ensure that history does not repeat itself. And I think the report needs to be more than just a cathartic exercise on state capture, but to clearly show what we need to change in order to ensure state capture does not happen again. Have you applied your mind to that? Secondly, having listened to all the evidence at the commission very closely, would it be unfair for me to draw the opinion that it has been projected because of evidence laid that former President Zuma was the architect of state capture? Would you disagree with that view, or would you ask us to hold off on drawing those conclusions until your report is submitted? And finally, given that we are now in a digital space where most hearings are online, is there any possibility of the Guptas testifying? Thanks, DCJ.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You have said, Reverend, will take 3 questions. I think you assumed that it would be 1 question per journalist. We now have 3 questions. Maybe I should answer these because there are 3. Yes. Thank you for those questions. 1, there will not be a provisional report of the commission. There will only be a final report of the commission. my target is that we try and complete the report by end of August. But I've asked for more time and asked for September, just in case we don't achieve that. It's very difficult to be exact with these things. So we are going to do the best we can to finish within this time. I think that nobody can doubt our determination to try and wrap up the work of the commission as soon as possible. Just judging by the late evening sessions that we have been having for so many days, working, sometimes having hearings on public holidays. We had a hearing on Freedom Day, 27th May. We had a brief hearing on the 16th of June. We have had some hearing on a Saturday. So I think nobody should doubt our commitment to finish the work of the commission as soon as possible. But even with that, I have always said we have to finish the work of the commission in a responsible manner. We can't just abruptly stop it and open the commission and its report to an unnecessary legal challenge that we could have avoided. Also leaving out witnesses that should be called. I'm sure there may be some that there may be debates whether we should have called or not, but I think from our side, it's important that whoever we haven't called that may be viewed as important, it must be that we have applied our minds and we are able to defend our decision. It mustn't be a situation where we just leave people out because we are in a rush to complete the work of the commission. So that's the answer to the first question. On the second question, I think you anticipated my response as to whether Mr. Zuma was the architect of state capture. We can't say anything at this stage. We will assess and review all evidence that has been led, and whatever we have to say about Mr. Zuma's role and the role of many others will be in the report. And 3, the Guptas. There is really no time to hear the Guptas now. We have reached a point where we have to wrap up. They made the election that they made, and we have to go ahead. Having said that, I must indicate that the Guptas did file some affidavits with the commission in response to certain witnesses, not all witnesses, in regard to certain witnesses, where they put their version. First, initially in support of their applications for leave to cross-examine certain witnesses, but later also, I think earlier this year or towards the end of last year, there are some affidavits that they filed. So we'll have a look at whatever is there, but we are not going to reopen a whole hearing now for the Guptas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, DCJ. We will now go to Tando. Tando, are you on the line?
Afternoon, DCJ. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon. My name is Tando Maeko from the Business Day. My question to the panel is, Mr. Zuma is no longer required to testify before the commission because of yesterday's Constitutional Court judgment. Will Zuma's no-show impede the outcome of the inquiry? If so, how will the Commission fill in the gaps that will be left by Zuma's absence?
Thank you, Tando. Can you take the next one, DCJ? Angelo, are you on the line? Angelo?
Yeah, hi there, Reverend. Thanks. The question is the follow-on to the question that I've just heard from our colleague at Business Day. Is there any benefit to not calling up Mr. Zuma to come and testify? I know he's going to jail apparently on Sunday, but the Commission has an incomplete report if it hasn't heard from the architect or the apparent architect of the state capture exercise. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you take the last turn, DCJ?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mawande, you're next on line. You may ask a question. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Rev. Sabona Mtian.
Yeah, what's up, one?
I think my question is much more pointed to Ubab Nombembe.
Yes.
You know, there's a feeling that much as the Commission has done so much work, as the DCJ gave us the stats in terms of the data that it has collected, 300 plus witnesses and all that shares. But there is a feeling that there hasn't been any success, or little, if any, at all, by law enforcement, such as the NPA and others, in moving on those cases that some view as, you know, a slam dunk. Do you think that Mr. Nombembe or DCJ, whoever,
Mawande disappeared there?
Yeah, he has disappeared.
Maybe he'll come back to the session, DCJ.
Okay, let me answer. I'll answer the first two, and I will leave the last one to Mr. Nombembe because it was directed to him. The first two questions are related, and I think I'll just try and answer both at the same time. I think they all talk about what the effect is of the absence of Mr. Zuma's evidence before the Commission. I think the starting point with regard to Mr. Zuma should be this, that Mr. Zuma did come and appear before the Commission in July 2019. A whole week was scheduled. He appeared. As you will recall, he was given an opportunity to make a statement, opening statement, and he was asked questions. Of course, the whole week was not used for his evidence because at a certain stage he wanted to walk out of the Commission. He complained about being cross-examined thoroughly. And you will recall that to many of the questions that he was asked, he said he did not remember or he was not sure. But of course, there were questions where he did answer and he did remember. It would have been better to have had Mr. Zuma appear before the Commission and making himself available for questioning until the questions were exhausted. But the Commission has called before it a number of witnesses who have given evidence, and many of them corroborating one another on various issues. So I am satisfied that in the end, the Commission will be able to make clear findings based on the evidence that it has had. And you must remember also that all the affidavits of witnesses who have implicated Mr. Zuma have been sent to him. He knows what those witnesses have said about him or against him. He has chosen to keep quiet and not deny or admit. So he has had a chance to challenge that evidence against him. He has had a chance, if he wanted to apply for leave to cross-examine them. He chose not to apply for leave to cross-examine them. So the commission will make its findings based on the numerous witnesses that it has had. So one can say that, of course, there will always be the part that Mr. Zuma did not avail himself to give full evidence. But I don't even know whether, if Mr. Zuma did come under compulsion, if he did comply, how much of help he would have been. We had, as the commission last year, when his counsel indicated that there was a possibility that if he was compelled to take the witness stand, he could take the witness stand and refuse to answer questions. Whether, of course, he would have ended doing that, we don't know. But I think that the commission has had a lot of evidence from a lot of witnesses, and it will have to make its findings based on that evidence. I think, Mr. Nombembe, do you wish to deal with the question that was directed at you about law enforcement agencies?
Yes, I can, Mr. J. Even though it's a legal question, but I will respond to it. What we cannot do is to competently respond on behalf of the effectiveness of the law enforcement agencies. However, what we can say is that there's a lot of work that is happening pursuant to the amendment of Regulation 11 of the Commission, which has enabled the law enforcement agencies to have maximum access and adequate access to some of the information they may need from the Commission, including the resources that the Commission has and can make available to them. So there's no limitation to their ability to be effective. And some of the successes, by the way, that the law enforcement agencies have registered recently have been on account of that cooperation and the implementation of that amended Regulation 11, which DCJ, you have been instrumental with Paul Pretorius in making it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nombembe. DCJ, Mr. Pretorius wants to add something on the Gupta-related question.
Okay.
Mr. Pretorius, over to you.
Yes, in answer to the question about the possibility of electronic communication allowing the Guptas to appear, it's not so much whether it's possible technically for them to appear. The question is whether they will subject themselves to the jurisdiction of the South African legal regime, which they won't do. In other words, they must come here, they must subject themselves to all the regulatory prescripts governing the commission, summonses, consequences of failure to answer questions, consequences of failure to give truthful and full answers. That they won't do. And until they do that, the legal team's view is it's inappropriate that they be called to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you very much. Can we take another round, DCJ, which is Ferial, Karen, and Teto? In that order, Ferial, Karen, and Teto. The floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Rev. Good morning, Judge. Happy 419th day. I was wondering
Thank you very much. Good morning.
I was wondering what had become of the criminal contempt charges which the commission laid at the Hillbrow police station when the former president left the commission. I know it was transferred to the Hawks. Do you regard the matter as moot? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Karen, it's your turn. Thank you.
Hi, just in response to Ferial's question, I have been told by the Hawks that the docket was taken to the NPA and it's now been referred back to the Hawks because of outstanding statements from the Commission. Are you able to give us any indication of the statements that are being sought from you? The second question, I'm sorry to do this to you, is in relation to your funding. There have been ongoing reports about lack of funding for investigators, the kind of devastating impact that has actually had on the state capture inquiry prosecutions. Hermione Cronje from the ID has spoken about this. How are you going to ensure that you get that money? And specifically in relation to the people that are on the ground that make sure that the inquiry actually gets broadcast, the transcriptions happen. We know that they haven't been paid overtime for a number of months now. Is there any closeness? Is there any certainty on when that will be resolved? And then finally, DCJ, the judgment yesterday making a lot of comments about the vociferous attacks that were launched on the judiciary, including yourself, by the former state president, allegations that you were part of an apartheid era plot, that you and your colleagues were alike to the apartheid government's persecution of Robert Sobukwe. I know that you actually worked with Victoria Mngenge. You've had personal experience of the devastating impact of apartheid brutality. Just on a personal front, having had situations where your home was photographed, it was put on the internet, people have been subjecting your office to threats. We know that bullets went through the window. We don't know what the cause was. On a personal level, do you ever regret taking on this inquiry and the kind of impact that it's had on you and the kind of attacks you and your colleagues have been subjected to? What are you hoping will happen now in terms of the impact on you personally? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
DCJ, are you able to take the last question?
Maybe we should, because Karen had quite a few, maybe we should. Karen, the first one had outstanding, but I think I didn't make a proper note.
Yes.
You want to repeat?
The Hawks have basically said to me that they are...
Oh, the criminal...
yes,
yeah,
that's
okay,
in relation to the walkout case.
Yes, okay, no, thank you. Let me start with Ferial's question. Well, we are going to have to apply our minds to the recent judgment of the Constitutional Court. As things stand, the criminal complaints that were laid with the police, they remain and they stand, but we will have to apply our minds whether the fact that Mr. Zuma has been sentenced to 15 months imprisonment changes anything in regard to that. But the criminal complaints have not been withdrawn. They are still there. Coming to Karen's first question, my recollection is that there is a complaint, and I think it refers to Mr. Zuma's walkout, where the secretary has drawn to my attention correspondence from the police or the Hawks, I'm not sure, where they have certain requests. The commission will be interacting with them. I think they may be needing to interview or obtain statements. I'm not sure, but they certainly have sent some correspondence to the secretary, who has drawn it to my attention. Unfortunately, because of the way in which one has been hectic trying to complete the hearing of oral evidence, one has not been able to give proper attention to that matter, but it will be given proper attention, particularly now that for all intents and purposes, and subject to the 6 or so witnesses who will be heard sometime in July and the president, the hearing of oral evidence has been completed. With regard to the funding, let me begin by saying this. I would like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation, very deep appreciation, to members of the legal team of the Commission and to members of the investigation team of the Commission, who have demonstrated an absolute commitment to the work of the Commission, to the extent that there have been months, particularly last year and early this year, when some of them were not paid. And I know there were times when both the legal team and the investigation team had not been paid for quite a long time, but they continued to do the work of the Commission because they appreciate how important the work of the Commission is to this nation. They went beyond the call of duty. Having said that, some payment was made, which covered mostly, I think, everyone was covered in terms of the last few months of last year, and up to the end of March. That my information is that they have been paid. There may be some outstanding payments of recent months, but April and May and maybe June. But my understanding is that that should be sorted out. Most of it should be sorted out. So there has been that. As to the issue of funding going forward for the rest of the extended term of the Commission, we appreciate that there are limited resources. And we appreciate that COVID-19 has made the situation worse in terms of money that can be made available by government. And money has had to be diverted from where it was originally intended to be used in order to deal with COVID-19. However, it is important that the work of the Commission be concluded properly. Otherwise, all the money that has been used would be a fruitless and wasteful expenditure if, in the end, we put in jeopardy the report of the Commission because we are not able to properly complete its work. There are, I'm told by the Secretary, ongoing discussions involving the Secretary of the Commission and the Department of Justice and National Treasury with regard to the issues of budget. As some of you will remember, there is an existing order of court issued by the Pretoria High Court, I think on the 17th of December 2017, when that court made an order that the president should establish this commission, that the president should ensure that there is proper funding for this commission. The president has given this commission his full and unwavering support. the Minister of Justice has given this commission his full support. I have no doubt that they too would like to see the commission complete its work properly. And I'm confident that the discussions relating to funding will produce positive results. With regard to the vociferous attacks that Mr. Zuma directed at the judiciary, and including myself and the justices of the Constitutional Court, the Constitutional Court has spoken and has made it quite clear that in our constitutional democracy, a situation cannot be allowed where all kinds of unfounded allegations can be thrown at the judiciary. As you say, Karen, I have personally been subjected to various attacks by Mr. Zuma. I have sought to continue to do my work and to do my work without fear, favor, or prejudice. It has been difficult for myself and my family, but there's a job to be done, and I accepted this job. It's a very important job to be done for the country. And I must also say that within the commission, the situation has been difficult for many people within the commission with all of these attacks. In the legal team, the investigation team, it's been very difficult. So it has not just been me. Do I regret taking this job? Not at all. If I was asked to do it again, I would do it again. Our country needed that this job be done. Somebody had to do it. The Chief Justice asked me to do it. I had no hesitation in agreeing to do it. I knew that there could be all kinds of challenges, but it was fine. Somebody had to do it, and I agreed to do it. I would do it again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. We're just going to be taking some online questions that have been sent to us, and then we'll end with the last three hands that are before us. The question from Graham from TV News is this one, DCJ. The question is, what is the current price of the commission? What has it cost taxpayers so far?
I'm sorry?
Current price tag. What is the current price tag of the commission, DCJ?
Oh, okay.
How much? What is the of the taxpayers so far? And the question is, enough, or do you think it may be an over? Has it been enough funding that the commission has received, or is it an overspend? That's a question from Graham from ETV News. Can you hear me, DCJ?
Yes. Okay. One, what is the price tag? I don't know the exact figure now. I didn't check the latest figures, but I accept that it's probably just under 1 billion rand or thereabout, or about 1 billion rand that has been spent maybe, I don't know if it's just over. The last time I knew it was just under 1 billion rand that has been used. But as I have said before, when that amount is taken into account, it's fair to take into account too that through the efforts of the Commission, no less than 64 million rand has been paid back to state-owned entities by McKinsey. The first amount was 850 million rand, which we talked about some time back. And recently, I think we did mention or announce at one of the hearings recently, I think there was 14 million rand that was paid back by McKinsey to, I think, SAA, so of that amount of just under 1 billion rand or around 1 billion rand, we have got to take into account that there has been that amount that has been paid back. But also one has got to just go back and say the importance of the work that the Commission is doing can't really be measured in rands and cents, because it's about strengthening our democracy. It's about accountability. It's about saying what measures should be put in place to make sure that the amount of looting that has put us where we are doesn't happen again. And maybe that part is extremely important, because whatever we do, if the looting can repeat itself, then that would really be a serious indictment on us as a country. So that's the answer I can give. I don't know whether the Secretary of the Commission is able to give an exact amount. The second question, Reverend, was what was the second question? I think I didn't write it down.
The second question is, has it been enough?
Oh.
Or do you think you've overspent? Enough, or you think it's an overspend?
Well, I think that the amount that has been used, as far as I know, has been used reasonably and has been used for important and necessary work. I don't think that it's been an overspend. Okay. Professor Musala, do you want to deal with the issue of the price tag? Do you have any figures?
Chairperson, we can't give exact figures as of this point, but the estimates that you communicated are correct. I think that we're hovering around about 1 billion or just under 1 billion. Our finances are managed and kept at the Department of Justice, so there are accurate figures that can be drawn from the Department of Justice. It's a no-brainer to do that.
Yeah,
we can get that and communicate that to the media, or the media can talk directly to the Department of Justice and those figures are there. We don't keep the cash at the commission. Our processes, financial processes of accountability are done through the department. But R1 billion or just under is absolutely correct. The only other point I can add, Deputy Chief Justice, is that we need to think also about the many billions of rands that are being exposed by the Commission's work. That represent the damage to our economy and the damage to our society that corruption and fraud represents. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Secretary. CJ, I'm going to give 3 hands and then I'm going to end with the last 2 questions on the comment line. Is Keto Mutlakwane, Khomotso, and Sophie Mukwena in that order? Just be crisp, colleagues, so that we can hands as well. Keto, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you so much, Reverend. Good day, everyone. BCJ, just something that I'd like to get your view on. In the minority judgment by Justices Theron and Jafta, there's mention of the fact that maybe you shouldn't have gone directly to the ConCourt and instead laid the criminal charge of contempt against Zuma in the High Court so that he would then have an opportunity to appeal, whereas he does not have that option in the ConCourt. Also going further to say that by virtue of that, essentially you abused your proximity to the ConCourt. What's your view? What's your comment on that?
Maybe let me deal with this quickly.
Sorry, just a second.
Well, I've read the majority judgment. I've had a look at the minority judgment, certain parts. I don't know whether it says anything about me abusing my proximity to the Constitutional Court. I know that other people have said that. But with regard to what we did, namely go straight to the Constitutional Court, we considered all of those options. We considered whether we should go lay a criminal complaint or go to the High Court or go to the Constitutional Court. If we had just laid a complaint, a criminal complaint, probably it would take quite long. And if we went to the High Court with a contempt application, possibly there would be finding at some stage and appeals that would delay. But we believed that our law allows that when somebody against whom an order was made by a court has defied that order of that court, that court which had issued the order that has been defied has the jurisdiction to deal with the contemptuous conduct. The majority judgment has vindicated the correctness of that view of the Commission. So I am satisfied that given all the circumstances, the Commission made the right decision to approach the Constitutional Court. I just want to make one point about appeals. You know, if you go to the High Court and have a case heard, which very often would be by one judge, and then there is an appeal either to a full bench or to the Supreme Court of Appeal or to the Constitutional Court, what happens is that in the end, various judges, a number of judges would have had an opportunity to apply their minds to your case and decide what the right decision is. If they are on appeal, they decide whether the lower court made the right decision. So the benefit of the appeal is that you get different judges looking at your matter and at different levels. If you go straight to the Constitutional Court by way of what is called direct access, the first point to be made is that the framers of our Constitution appreciated that there would be cases where it is appropriate for the Constitutional Court to receive a matter directly and deal with it as a court of first and last instance. It is not something that the Constitutional Court does all the time. It usually allows other courts to deal with matters. But when your matter is being heard by the Constitutional Court, you have the benefit of your matter being considered not by one judge, not by two judges, not by three judges, but by a minimum of 8 judges. It could be 9, it could be 10, it could be 11. If you go to the High Court, one judge hears your matter, and thereafter you appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal, it gets heard by 5 judges, and you stop there, your matter has been heard by 6 judges. At the Constitutional Court, your matter will have been heard, even if it comes before the Constitutional Court as a court of first and last instance. Your matter will have been heard by either 11 judges, 10 judges, or 9 judges, or 8 judges. They have brought their collective wisdom to bear on your matter. You have had the benefit of various judges considering your matter. It's not as if you have gone to one judge and that judge has taken a view and decided your matter, and no other judge has had a chance to look at the question whether that judge has dealt with the matter correctly. So I thought I must just emphasize that part. Okay, Reverend?
Thank you so much, PCJ. We'll take the last 3 hands, which is Upoli, Khomotso, and also Mukwena. In that order, Upoli, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Reverend. Deputy Chief Justice, thanks for this.
Yes, good morning, Polly.
Good morning, Deputy Chief Justice. There is, and I'm sure whether you'll agree, there is a feeling that the country is going into a period of uncertainty with the imminent imprisonment of the former president. Now, there are those who are going to personalize this and say this was born out of your refusal to recuse yourself so that he could testify. Do you feel at this stage that your personal safety, or should we say the security around you and perhaps your family, needs tightening? The final question, at the conclusion of your commission, should you find that there was indeed state capture, what would that mean for the country's young democracy?
Thank you, Paul. Let me deal with that first. Well, Toli, the matter of my recusal was dealt with in my judgment in regard to Mr. Zuma's application. I found, as you would know, that there was no proper basis for me to recuse myself. But you might recall a question that I posed to Mr. Zuma's counsel during his address to me in support of the application that I should recuse myself, which was, if I were to recuse myself, what then happens? And you will also recall that he actually did not have an answer to that question, because his answer was something along the lines that the commission should not make its problem Zuma's problem. Now, you see, the chairperson of this commission was appointed as a result of a remedial action, the remedial action of the public protector at the time. So it had to be a judge who was selected by the Chief Justice, and that name would be given to the then president for him to appoint. Now, I have had evidence when Mr. Zuma applied for my recusal in November. I had evidence over 3 years or 2.5 years. So if I had recused myself in regard to evidence relating to Mr. Zuma, who was going to weigh and assess Mr. Zuma's evidence? Where was I going to come back after Mr. Zuma had given evidence, maybe over weeks or months? And the person who would have chaired the commission when Zuma was giving evidence, who would have appointed that person? What would have been the legal basis? Which instrument, legal instrument, would have been used to appoint that person? The person who would have had Mr. Zuma's evidence would make findings, but of course those findings would not be the findings of the judge that the public protector had said should be selected by the Chief Justice. And the Chief Justice had already selected that judge. There was no provision that he could select another one. Would that person or judge submit his or her own separate report to the president relating to Mr. Zuma? And I would submit my own report to the president relating to all the other witnesses. How would that person who would have had Mr. Zuma's evidence have assessed whether the other witnesses who gave evidence against implicating Mr. Zuma, how would he have assessed their evidence? Because he would not have had them. He would only have had Zuma. So it would have resulted in a situation where it seems I would have had all the other witnesses and would assess their evidence, but would not assess Mr. Zuma's evidence because it was heard by somebody else. And that somebody else would be confined to assessing Mr. Zuma's evidence because he didn't hear the other witnesses. It's just a legally untenable situation. But of course, we must remember that in July 2019, Mr. Zuma appeared before me, and at the end of the proceedings during that week, undertook to continue to appear before me. For the rest of 2019, he continued to undertake to appear before me, even though he did not appear when he was supposed to appear. At the beginning of 2020, he still undertook to appear before me. He seems to only have had issues with appearing before me after I had insisted that he had to appear before the commission. And I just want to underline this. Around September, maybe beginning of September last year, Mr. Zuma's lawyers, in response to having been notified by the commission that Mr. Zuma was supposed to appear before the commission on certain dates, wrote to the commission and in effect said Mr. Zuma was not going to appear before the commission because, one, he was busy with his other court cases. He was preparing for a criminal trial, and he was going to consider certain amendments to the regulations of the commission. And he mentioned COVID-19, if I'm not mistaken, as well. But the effect of that letter, as I understood it, was really to say, I'm not giving you any dates when I'm available to appear, and I have other things to do. I've got my other important matters to attend to, court cases. I'm not coming to the commission. It was in response to that letter that I took the stance that I insisted that Mr. Zuma should appear. It was after that announcement by me that Mr. Zuma then came up with the idea that I should recuse myself. Before that, he had never raised the issue of my recusal. He raised it after I made it clear that I insisted that he should appear before the commission. And I was not prepared to allow him not to appear because he said he was preparing for his criminal trial or had other things to do. So, but at any rate, the judgment that I gave with regard to my recusal is there. It explains my reasoning, but also something that I've said before. In the Constitutional Court, I have sat in many cases where Mr. Zuma was involved since I have been in the Constitutional Court. And I gave details of those cases last year in a media statement. And Mr. Zuma had never complained that I should not have sat in matters involving him. And in regard to the recusal application, he sought to say that was different because those were matters relating to him as president. But the fact of the matter is that the matters that the commission wanted him to come and testify about are matters that related to him as president also. They were not matters that related to him personally. They were matters related to how he may have used his position as president of the country. So I don't think that it would have been practical to recuse myself, but in my judgment on the recusal application, I didn't get to that because I concluded that there was no proper basis for me to recuse myself. I hope I've answered your questions, Collie. Maybe there is one that I missed. Did I miss one?
Well, Deputy Chief Justice, the centrality of that first question was around your personal safety and that of your family.
Yes.
Do you think that your security needs tightening, but also the final one, not to forget that should you conclude that there was state capture, what would that mean for this country's young democracy?
Let me start with the last one. Should I conclude that we are state capture? I think that that would be of profound importance to this country. And obviously, it would be regrettable that that would have happened, namely the state capture had taken place. But what will be of greatest importance is what recommendations I would make to try and make sure that if they are implemented, state capture would not happen again. But also, it would also, what would be important also is whether there are going to be consequences for those who participated in state capture. With regard to my personal safety, I must say that the state has taken steps to make sure that safe, appropriate security measures are put in place. I do think that they are assessing the situation right now, and I would not be surprised if they beefed up the security in relation to me and my family. I have no doubt that they are assessing the situation and applying their minds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We will hand over to Khomotso and Sophie Mokoena, and then we'll end with 2 questions from the online platform. Over to you, Khomotso.
Thank you. Good afternoon, DCJ. My question relates I'm from Power 987. My question relates to the law enforcement agency's evidence. You did mention a few weeks ago that you may not make any findings with regards to that, especially with iPad. Are you able to tell us what other law enforcement agencies you won't be able to make findings on? And the second question relates to the 5 or 6 witnesses that you still need to hear from. Are you able to tell us who those are? If not, what streams of evidence will they be focusing on? Thank you.
Thank you, Khomotso. One, well, the law enforcement agencies really would be the Hawks and the NPA, IPET. I think those are the ones. I may be missing out 1 or 2. Those are the ones. The second question, I'm sorry, Khomotso, please just repeat the second question.
The second question is, what evidence are the 5 or 6 witnesses going to be when they do come to the commission, or who and who are they, if you're able?
Okay, I would not wish to tell you now, Khomotso, or tell the public the identity of those witnesses. But as you know, closer to the time when a witness is going to give evidence, we do make the announcement. So in due course, we will. Mostly, it's implicated persons, but there may be 1 or 2 who might not be viewed as implicated, but mostly it's implicated persons. I would also not wish to give you the work stream, Khomotso, please forgive me.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. We'll end with our Sophie Mokoena. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Reverend. Deputy Chief Justice, I have 3 questions. One, you spoke about... Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I was saying good afternoon.
Oh, thank you, Deputy Chief Justice. You spoke about presenting a report to the President of the Republic to ensure that there's credibility in terms of the implementation of your recommendation. Seeing that he is also appearing before the Commission, in terms of allegations leveled at the president, both in his capacity as the ANC president and the president of the country. How are you going to handle that matter? Because he must receive the report, but he must also implement. There were allegations leveled against him. The second question is the role of Parliament. When you were speaking to different witnesses, it became clear that the public representatives, some of them didn't do what they were elected to do in terms of holding the executive accountable, but rather chose to protect the executive, only broke ranks when it was fashionable to do so, or when a politician is a lame duck. Are you not intending to invite other smaller parties who were drowned? Maybe they can share some other smaller parties. The last one, are you looking at multinational companies and the financial institution, international ones, because these transactions were made possible by these financial institutions, particularly the multinational ones and the multinational companies. That's what Peter Hain is calling for. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sophie. With regard to the first one, where you are saying I'm supposed to present my report to the president, but he is also appearing before me. He's head of the ANC. Well, it is true that he has given evidence as president of the ANC and will give evidence as president of the country. And there may well be findings that relate to the ANC. There may be findings that relate to him. But there is just nothing one can do. There is only one president. So the report will be prepared, then it will be given to him. My recollection is that he has previously indicated his commitment to implement the recommendations of the commission. Of course, that must be an in-principle position that he has taken, because obviously until he sees the recommendations, he can't say completely, but I think he was indicating his preparedness in principle to ensure that the recommendations of the commission are implemented. He will obviously have to apply his mind to the recommendations, and maybe he will decide to implement some and not others, or implement all of them. One can only know once the recommendations are there and are also known. With regard to Parliament, there certainly is a very important role to be played by Parliament in terms of oversight and holding the executive accountable, to try and make sure that the levels of corruption in the country are brought down, and to try and make sure that in the future, to the extent that there may have been state capture in this country already, in the future, it doesn't happen again. And if I find in the report that there was state capture, as I've said before, it will become quite important to say, to ask the question whether Parliament played its oversight role, and whether if it had played its role properly, it might not have prevented state capture. With regard to inviting political parties, maybe small political parties, as you say, I think I've said this before. Early last year, I think we wrote as the commission to all the political parties which had been there, which had been in Parliament prior to this last general election. and invited them to make submissions to the commission and invited them to give the commission their members who could be witnesses with regard to certain matters relating to parliamentary oversight. And the ANC ultimately responded and made available its current chairperson and, of course, the president of the party. Certain members of parliament belonging to the DA came forward and gave evidence. I just don't know whether they were made available by the DA or whether it was just their individual decisions to take part, but they did. But other than those, other parties did not respond. And I therefore don't contemplate that I would invite them again, because maybe they don't think that they can contribute to the work of the commission. With regard to financial institutions, of course, the money flows unit of the commission has exposed a lot of evidence as to how money that emanated from SOEs went outside of the country and ultimately reached certain destinations, and in some cases came back to the country. And the role of financial institutions is very important. I want to say, Sophie, if we had all the time, there are a lot of institutions that we could look into. But we have to accept that we have certain limitations. We are going to look at what we can in terms of financial institutions, which includes banks within the country. But we are not able to do everything we would have liked to do, and we have got to be realistic and accept that some of the things we will not be able to reach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, DCJ. The last question from Justice Milana from ENCA. He wants your comment on the minority judgment of the Concord on the part that says you made your dispute with Mr. Zuma a dispute between us and Mr. Zuma, thereby placing us in an invidious position. I'll repeat that, DCJ. He wants a comment on the minority judgment where in the part it says you made your dispute with Mr. Zuma, dispute between us and Mr. Zuma, thereby placing us in an invidious position. That's the question from Mr. Simelane. Wants to your comment today.
Well, I, as I said earlier on, I haven't read the minority judgment fully. I've looked at it. I've seen certain parts. I didn't see that part. It's the majority judgment that I've read. All I can say at this stage is the majority judgment does not share that view, number one. Number two, there is nothing like me using any dispute I have with Zuma. I actually don't have any dispute with Mr. Zuma. He himself, initially in a letter that he had written to, in the first letter that he wrote to the commission last year, where he raised for the first time the issue that he would ask for my recusal, he initially said there were some hostilities between us, or hostile relations. And I wondered what hostile relations he was talking about, because I didn't know of any hostility between us. I waited to see what details he would give in his affidavit in support of the recusal application, where he would elaborate on this allegation. When I looked at his affidavit, I realized that he was not pursuing the idea that there were hostile relations between us. Instead, he was saying we were friends. And of course, I've dealt with that issue. So I think that what matters the most is the judgment of the court, and the judgment of the court is the majority judgment. I'm yet to read fully the minority judgment, but as far as requiring Mr. Zuma to appear before the commission, it's quite clear that there was evidence before the commission that made it necessary that he should be asked to come and answer questions in the commission. There is nothing beyond that. It's Mr. Zuma who came up with certain allegations. So there is nothing other than the commission doing its job. The commission could never have allowed Mr. Zuma not to appear before it in circumstances where, one, during the relevant period that the commission is looking into, he was the president of the country, and two, various allegations had been made against him which seek to link him with allegations of state capture and corruption. There was no way that any chairperson of the commission, even if it was not me, would have allowed Mr. Zuma to go away without giving evidence and still the commission retain integrity. The commission did what it was required by our constitution and the law to do, and it did so in the public interest. Okay, is that the end?
Thank you very much, Chairperson, for the opportunity. And I'm giving you the opportunity to have closing remarks if there are any from your side, Chairperson, then we'll close the media briefing.
Yes. Mr. Pretorius, Prof. Musala, Mr. Nombembe, do you want to say anything in closing before I close?
No more. Thanks, DCJ.
Prof?
Deputy Chief Justice, just to say thank you very much to our colleagues from the media and from the public. We are not confused and we are not afraid. We continue to do the job.
Yes. Mr. Nombembe?
Nothing further, Mr. J. Thanks for clarifying some of the matters that we did. Thanks.
Thank you. It remains for me to once again thank you, all of you members of the media, for availing yourself for this briefing. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your support for the work of the commission. And thank you for the questions you put to me. And I hope that we answered the questions and provided necessary clarification. And thank you to Reverend Stimela. Thank you, Mr. Nombembe. Thank you, Mr. Pretorius. Thank you, Prof. We are done. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I almost said we adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay.